Hello, boxing fans, and welcome back to Andy's Caverns. We've got a real treat for you tonight. We've got our second episode of Fab Four Boxing. So we've got Jamie, the top left on my screen, Julian McGowan, the Esteemed boxing trainer and pundit, bottom left, and Bob from Canada's Boxing Channel. How we doing, boys? All good?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
And I think we're going to have a chat about AI boxing judges. What were you thinking? What were you thinking,
Well,
Julian?
yeah, Julian had started us off this subject at the end of part one. So, Julian, why don't you continue to tell us what you think about it?
Well, I'm not the resident IT expert in this boxing commission. However, I am told by my executive at work we have to start embracing AI. And I was thinking about when they introduced the AI judge initially. I think was it the first Fury Usyk or the second Fury Usyk fight? And
Yep.
initially, you hate that kind of thing, don't you? You think it's just a gimmick. And what we've seen so far with the AI judging is it's really aligned to what we think, and it's been aligned largely to the judges' scorecards certainly in the big fights we've seen. And I started to think, is it a bad thing? I'm not suggesting that we replace judges automatically, but all we do is complain about the standard of officiating from referees, from timekeepers, all the way down to obviously the judges who are the most important people. And it's not that great, is it? And I think it's also quite inconsistent. So I was just playing around with the notion of AI judging, and particularly in the second Usyk Fury fight, when I scored it live, I always score fights live, and I had Usyk 4 rounds up. I had it 116, 112, 112, exactly the same as the AI judge. And then the Conor Ben fight again, I had it 9-3 to Conor Ben when I did watch that retrospectively. I thought Eubank Jr. outlanded Conor Ben in the majority of those rounds, and the AI judge thought exactly the same thing. And when you look at the punch stats, and we know there's more things than just punches landed, but if you look at the rules of boxing, that is the first criteria until you get to a tiebreak in terms of scoring fights. And when you look at the punch stats for those fights I've just mentioned, the punch stats echoed the AI, echoed the judges who got it right, and mirrored what we all thought as people who think we know a little bit about boxing and how to score fights. And it just started me thinking, is it a bad thing? It was a debate what I think is worth having.
Well, I think it is a debate worth having. I mean, with enough high-speed cameras and enough computing power, it ought to be able to exceed the ability of a human being vis-a-vis, observing something and then recording it down somehow. In the same way that I remember when I first saw one of those totally self-driving cars they have in some American cities, I was
Mhm.
horrified. And then I realized, but the cameras in each four corners and the one on top are actually moving way faster than any human being, and it's less likely to make a mistake. Um, I still personally don't want to get in one, but but that's neither here nor there.
You're
So I think it's
eliminating. Sorry, but Bob, I think you're eliminating the human factor issue, aren't you?
yeah, and
So
human
humans are
error.
fallible. Yeah, humans are fallible, but maybe computers less so. Yeah.
I mean, as human beings, we make mistakes, but we're also subject to external influences, right?
Yeah, and if say judges are getting looked after, that could influence them, or the fans could influence them because they can hear the fans. Possibly the AI can't hear the fans. Do you know if any of these scores were made public, like at the end of each round, or was it all kept
I
quiet till
think
the
I,
end?
I think they were. I think the AI judge kept coming up on screen. The only thing what my brain doesn't allow me to understand is how does an AI judge score a 10-8 round if there's no knockdown? Because we know that's a thing. If a fighter
Mm.
gets hurt badly but doesn't touch down, how does the AI judge score a 10-8? And that was the only thing because in the second Fury fight and the Ben Eubank fight, we didn't have any 10-8 rounds without a knockdown, if that makes sense. So I did
Yeah.
wonder how that might happen.
You would also, I'm guessing the AI judge doesn't score even rounds either, possibly, maybe.
I think
Wouldn't need to.
Mm.
it
Sorry,
wouldn't.
Joe.
No.
Sorry, Jamie.
It wouldn't need to, because all this, I don't ever score even rounds, because I think, apologies if any of you gents do, but I find it a bit of a lazy perspective. I think at the end of the day, these are both athletes. They're both trained, hopefully honestly, and I want to reward them for the work they've put in and fine margins, particularly at world class level. I want to acknowledge those really, really fine margins, so I never score even rounds. Even if you've got the most boring round going, I can still find something that I would score criterion-wise.
I mean, I'd really want to hear from somebody that knew AI like 1,000% better than I do. But on its face, AI judging is more appealing to me than increasing the number of human judges, which Mauricio Suleiman spoke about. He talked about having, I think it was it 5 or was it 7? I can't recall now. But he talked about increasing the number of human judges, and I'm
5, he said, Bob.
5
He
was
said
it?
5,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm less enamored with that, to be perfectly honest with
Well,
you.
what you're effectively saying, Bob, is I'm not quite sure I trust the judgment of 3 skilled officials, so I'm going to make it 5. So we just make sure we get it right, and then I'll make it 7, and I'll make it 9. And it's an admission that judging is poor by it. Look, why not have one judge who's absolutely on the money? Why not have one
Yep.
judge? Like a referee,
Yep.
like referees score fights, don't they? When the non-title fights. And I'm not saying that's what I would do. I'm just thinking outside the box and thinking, well, if you have 5, have one. Who's look at the consistency and look at the grading of judges. Score judges accordingly. We've got who are the judges who continually get it right all the time? And there are judges, because you can get on BoxRec, you can see the history of judges. Who are the judges who continually get it right, who know what they're looking for? Maybe we have one judge in a big fight, a judge who's a high level judge. It's just a thought.
Maybe also we have a system where judges have to be accountable for their decisions at all anything above regional belt level.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is, who decides what's controversial? It's so subjective, isn't it? Like, I might score I'd score a fight differently from someone else. I mean, like the Conor Benn and Chris Eubank example was a perfect example. Commentary has such a big sway. I was speaking to somebody and she turned around and went, "Oh, that fight was a draw," and I went, "No, it wasn't. It wasn't a draw, Haley. No." I said, "I'll tell you why you say it's a draw." She went, "Why?" I said, "Well," and she went, "Well, me boyfriend, he was listening to it on the radio, and he said it was a draw." I said, "There you go." So, it's who decides what's controversial. So, even though I do agree that people should be accountable, it's like, well, the people that would make them accountable haven't got clean hands either. So do you know what I mean? Let's get our hens in order, or whatever you want to say, before we start, holding people accountable. Let's clean some hands first.
One maybe anomaly I can think is if, say, you've got an aggressive fighter against a guy that's backing off, but the guy that's backing off lands 15 punches, the aggressive guy lands 14 punches. And then say that happens for 5 rounds. The guy landing the extra punch gets every round. But to the eye, this aggressive guy looks like he's forcing the fight. He's controlling ring center. He's forcing the fight. He's backing the guy up. But the other guy is just landing 1 punch more each round. That's when you could see controversy at the end, because the perception is the aggressive guy is doing all the work, but he's landing 1 less punch. What do you think about that?
The thing is, Andy, with that, and it's such a great point, because I was thinking, as you were talking, I was already thinking about what's the key thing here is, and I don't mean this in a patronizing way, we talk about judges being incompetent. We hear this all the time on social media channels. But if you actually have this discussion with people and you say, well, do you know how to score a fight? Do you know the criteria of scoring fights? And I've had this open discussion with people who have said, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And I had this with a couple of guys at work who said they thought that the Conor Benn fight, Eubank Jr. fight, which was topical because your layman watched that fight, they thought it were a draw. They thought it were really close. And someone said to me at work, but the judges got it way too wide. And I said, well, what's the criteria for scoring boxing? Well, I'm not really sure. And I went, well, you can't make a comment on the criteria for scoring boxing if on a decision if you don't know what the criteria is, and most people don't know it. So, for example, British judges have a slightly different criteria to what was used to be known in US judges, but ultimately it's like amateur boxing, domestic boxing, and world boxing. The number one criteria is punches landed, effective, clean punches landed. But it's a great point you've said there, Andy, because what about if boxer A lands 15 shots in a round, as you've just said? Light punches, but scoring punches, that they reach the target, the nice crisp punches, and boxer B lands 14 punches, really heavy, solid punches, what get the gasps from the crowd. Who wins that round? Because according to the Green Book, the British Boxing Board of Control rule book, and the scoring that happens in the US, boxer A wins the round because they've landed more clean punches. So do you discriminate against a non-puncher? It's such a complex thing. It's only then when it gets to the second tier of scoring, you get to choose, don't you? You've got effective aggression, ring generalship, and defense. Those are criteria too. But most people aren't aware of those things. And depending on what's applicable to the fight that you're watching, you then pick, I couldn't decide who landed the most shots. Well, who had the effective aggression? Well, no one was really the aggressor. They both stood off landing shots. Okay. Who had the better defense? Who threw most punches and who evaded most punches? And who was the ring general and who dictated the kind of pace of the fight. But if you speak to the layman, they're not aware of the scoring, but everybody's got an opinion on the scoring of a fight. It wouldn't happen in any other sport, would it?
I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and it was about the Ben Eubank fight, and said that it was very, very clear that Conor Benn had won that fight because Chris Eubank Jr. had some more marks on his face. And I'm like, you're right. He did have more facial markings, but that's not how the game works. But it's like, at some points you gotta just give up on that, right?
Yeah. Well, my response to that, Bob, would be, what if Chris Eubank was an undiagnosed haemophiliac? His face would be an absolute mess.
Oh, for
You would
sure.
only have to touch him, wouldn't you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
And as for going forward, and being aggressive, Muhammad Ali won a lot of fights going backwards, didn't he? Backing up and counting on people, as opposed to going forward and being aggressive. He lay on the ropes quite a bit as well. He wasn't necessarily in the centre of the ring, but he was controlling it, but from a different sort of.
I must confess, I'm a fan that likes what used to be called Brooklyn scoring. I like to reward the come forward fighter, the guy who's got all the aggression, even if he's a rank amateur against a seasoned pro. I'll always be supporting that guy.
It shouldn't be like that, though, should it? It should not be open to interpretation. Even that term, ring generalship. Now, we'll have our own interpretations of what that is. Ring generalship as a term is very ambiguous, and I never thought I'd really agree with it, but you hear that term all the time, don't you? It's what you like. Well, clearly, like us four who watch boxing on a regular basis, and we've been involved with the sport, as a fan or professionally or whatever. If we're not 100% certain, how can we expect the sport to go forward and do the right thing, make the right decisions? It's ridiculous.
That is the nature of boxing. It's so subjective that the four of us can sit and argue about, ranking fighters and rating fighters. That's part of the beauty about it. It's unlike the 100 meters in athletics where it's pure, stopwatch time.
Yeah, the only thing I would say in, against that really is we're dealing with people's lives. Like, people can be killed in this sport, and I think it just needs to be more definitive.
I might be wrong, but I think what annoys most boxing fans is if you've got a guy that's negative, not really making a fight it, but he could still be landing the more punches, but because he might have a good defense, but he's negative and he's not good to watch. Yeah, the guy who looks like he's making the fight, he's got ring center and that, pushing the guy back, but he's maybe a lot of his punches are getting blocked. That can lead to disappointment as well in scoring, I think, because
Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao there, aren't they? Like some people were saying Manny won the fight because he was pushing forward. It's like he wasn't.
I don't think he was.
Some people I've spoken to.
For Lawrence Okoli is somebody who I'd rather not watch fight.
Yeah,
agree completely there, Bob. Yeah,
he's awful.
He's fighting in your front garden. You draw the curtains, probably.
Definitely.
I like that expression.
I'm sure I've heard Julian saying that.
Honestly, it's like paint drying. Watches Lawrence Okoli box, doesn't it? Honestly,
yeah.
Yeah, he's. We'll see what happens going forward. It's a rumor of him fighting. Who was it now?
He was supposed to fight Riakporhe, right?
Right. Yeah.
But then that fell apart, and I can't remember the reasoning. Do you guys remember the reason it fell apart?
I don't know. I heard Bacoli saying he wanted to fight him as well. So whether that, but then Frank Warren's going to freeze him out, isn't he? Because
probably. I know why that probably didn't happen. They thought that Riakporhe had sleep apnea, but it wasn't actually sleep apnea. He was just watching. He was watching Okoli fight, and every time he put it on YouTube, he'd fall asleep. So they cancelled the fight without actually looking at his medical diagnosis.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he gets on going forward. There's been lots of excuses about him.
Did you use the word interesting then, Andy? Did you say interesting?
well, maybe I'm stretching a bit.
Listen, the guy's got some accreditations. I'm not knocking him, but for me, it's I've nothing against fighters who aren't exciting. What I do have against fighters is the type of fighter who punches and is looking to grab as soon as he's landed that backhand. I would have kicked him out of 7 or 8 fights I've seen him in, genuinely. Referees, we're just talking about scoring of fights. I've seen Lawrence Okoli in fights where he literally is, he's got a heavy right hand, but he will throw the jab, and as he throws a jab, he's not looking to land that backhand, he's jabbing and he's looking to grab. Get him out. If you're not engaging in a fight, if you're looking to tie up as early as the first round, get him out the fight.
Henry, I can one day against Lewis.
Ricky Hatton post Costa-Zoo. Any Ricky Hatton fight.
I think what we're seeing here is evidence that Jules has been out of training for a while, because that's Inside Fighting 2025 version.
Apparently so.
That was the next
it's what I think what that is, Bob, is what Bruce Lee said: the art of fighting without fighting. That's what that is.
Yeah.
Well, we could go down a rabbit hole with that, but I mean, I was the world's biggest Ricky Hatton fan. I could have told you what he was having for breakfast at some point.
Beer, probably. That's what he was having for breakfast.
Probably, yeah. Well, fry up from the butty box and 5 pints, yeah. But it just, like every fight post Ricky Hatton, post Costa Zoo, that's what he would do. And I, even as the biggest Ricky Hatton fan, I didn't understand why he felt so aggrieved at Joe Cortez getting between him and
somebody said it. Somebody said it. Thank you.
I was
at the time. I got hammered online.
No, I was his biggest fan. I loved Ricky. I like 17. I nearly cried when he lost. Like I was that passionate. But I just thought he's not working on the inside. He's jabbing. He's going to throw the backhand, as you just said. But instead of throwing the backhand, he's going, oh, shit, I better grab, I better hold. And now he's made a career of it, hasn't he? Going, oh, Joe Cortez, he was out of order towards me. No, he wasn't. He was reffing and he was doing the right thing.
I don't need to add anything to that. You just said it to him.
We've all touched on it, various conversations, but there is something, and I think it came up, I know, in our WhatsApp group chat a couple of weeks ago, that there's this lost art of inside fighting. And I know that, Jules, you and I chatted offline about it. It's sort of like it's seemingly not taught as much.
Yeah. I mean, I'll let someone else step in because I will talk for 3 hours about the lost art of infighting. So, Jamie, Andy, Bob, you guys shoot, and then I'll If you want me to
Well,
speak, I'll speak.
I mean, I can just jump on what I was saying before about Hatton. You know, there's a difference. Inside fighting is just, you know, not tying the arms up, just allowing, you know, for close quarters, and just working inside, literally. Do you know what I mean? Look, and Ricky wasn't doing that, and I think, you know, to the uninitiated, you know, they're going to think he's hard done by, but he just wasn't. I get on my soapbox about that, and like I say, I loved Ricky, but no, he was a after that Costa fight, he just become a poor fighter to me. The fighter that beat Ray Oliveira, that was the best version of Ricky Hatton, I thought, in 2004, and then after that, they just went with a one style. But I'm going down a different track. Sorry, Jens.
I think it's fair to say that Ricky Hatton and Tyson Fury were both they didn't help themselves by their lack of dedication to the sport outside of camp. I think that'd be fair to say.
Well, Bobby Rimmer said to here's Jamie name dropping again. Sorry, everyone. Bobby Rimmer said to me that it was basically Ricky was the reason that everyone was like, oh, you know, we'll have 12-week training camps. I'm like, what do you mean a camp? You're just going to your gym. You're not in camp. Like 12 weeks when really you don't need 12 weeks. I'm sure Jules will echo that point. You shouldn't need 12 weeks. You should be a machine. You should be ticking over.
Sykes didn't live the life, but the most we ever did was an 8-week camp. We did 6 weeks. We did 5 weeks for British title fights because it's about condensing what you do. And yeah, and whenever I hear this now, this fighters fighting 3 times a year, 12, 14 weeks camp. I've never heard as much rubbish in my life. I think what are you
You're
doing?
burning yourself out, aren't you?
Yeah, it's 5 to 6 weeks. You know, Leonard, Duran, Hagler, those guys would get 6 weeks solid hard work, and nobody was fitter than those guys. No one punched more and had better battles than those guys. You know, even from all the weight divisions from the top to the bottom, those guys set such an incredible pace, and they had 5 or 6 weeks camp. Maybe 8 weeks would be considered quite unique. A couple of weeks pre-camp, but I never bought into it. And the fighter I trained, whatever happened, and whatever level he boxed at, nobody, and even the England squad would always agree with that. No one was fitter than Gary Sykes. Nobody. And we did that in 6 weeks. And people used to say to me, "I was naturally fit." I'm like, what does that even mean? He was naturally fit. He wasn't naturally fit. He couldn't get through 4 rounds the first time he sparred Carl Johansson. He wasn't naturally fit. He had a good work for it, but he got himself fit.
Yeah,
that's a different subject. I mean, inside fighting. Anybody? I mean, I'll want to start.
Lennox Lewis and Henry Akinwande, what I mentioned a wee while ago. That's one of the few fights I actually seen Lewis trying to fight on the inside. He was generally an outside fighter, wasn't he? He wasn't necessarily the best inside fighter, Lennox Lewis. Riddick Bowe was a good inside fighter.
Brilliant.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
I think Usyk's a good inside fighter, actually. Usyk can fight anyway. Inside, outside, there's just something about him, and there's very, very few that I can speak of who's as good all round.
This is really, really mad sort of selection, but Jeff Fennick, I love watching Jeff Fennick box. Jeff Fennick can fight on the inside. Ferocious. Well, Barry McGuigan.
I think
another fantastic.
McGuigan was. I think first of all, it's the distinction of inside fighting, because you have a shorter guy who's a pressure fighter who has to get close. So there can be a difference between fighting up close and fighting inside. So you mentioned a fighter there, and in Riddick Bowe, 6'5", huge guy. He really could fight in the pocket. And then you got, fighters like Henry Armstrong was considered to be by consensus, the greatest inside fighter there's ever been. But if you watch footage of Henry Armstrong, first of all, he was an incredible, little perpetual motion, was an incredible pressure fighter, but he was naughty, and he wouldn't get away with that this day and age. The first thing that Henry Armstrong did was he ducked below the waist. He didn't look, when you roll shots, you're supposed to keep your eyes on your opponent. Armstrong would just sway at the waist. He'd have his head facing the floor, and he'd come up with the looping left hook and the overhand right. So that wouldn't be allowed now. And then you've also got the fact that Henry Armstrong used to throw the kidney punch, used to throw a right hand right around the back on the kidney. That wouldn't be allowed now. So there's so many factors why it's a lost art. I think one of them is maybe at the top level, boxing's so valuable that we can't have people doing the naughties and doing the head clashes and things like that. Boxing's a much cleaner sport than it used to be. I think there's also the fact that people stay amateur much longer, and the amateur code is very much, about
It's simply
scoring
not part of
shots.
the amateur code, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't see that wrestling and up close fighting very rarely in amateur boxing. So people have longer amateur careers, not always, always exceptions, and shorter professional careers. But whenever you think of the great inside fighters, of the last 20, 30, 40 years, you always think of Roberto Duran. Well, look how many fights Roberto Duran had. And I'm sure
Yeah.
he wasn't a great inside fighter after he'd had 15 pro fights. It's something that
Mm.
he learned his ring craft, and by having multiple fights, he became such a good inside fighter. And there's also little things like the naughties, like I said, there's a kidney punching, there's the ducking below the waist. Duran used to do something what we call a bounce. So when you're in a clinch with somebody, inside fighters generally rest their head on the outside, on the left-hand shoulder. They rest their head there. And Duran used to do a bounce. It's something that you do when you're in a clinch with someone or they've got the head on your chin. You start bouncing and the head pops up and down. It's really uncomfortable. That get people warn against that now. So I don't think I said I'd start in, but I think there's too many factors why we don't see great inside fighters. We have great pressure fighters, like Bam Bam. Bam Bam's a great pressure fighter. He's a great close fighter. But when I think about inside fighters, I think about someone who can box at range, someone who can box at mid range, and someone who can fight inside. And how very symbolic that Mike McCallum passed away.
Yeah.
Great Mike McCallum passed away yesterday, and Mike McCallum could fight at all ranges. He was such a fantastic fighter. I remember when he hunted down Milton McCrory, and he just got inside and he put pressure on him, and those sneaky little right uppercuts and shots underneath. A master of inside fighting, and of course the left up that knocked out Donald Curry, which is a highlight reel KO as good as you'll ever see. So he was a master craftsman, and I just don't know if anyone's teaching it. I don't know if it will be allowed in this day and age. Very different times.
Nick Paul's quite a good pressure fighter, isn't he?
Nick Paul's a good pressure fighter. Yeah.
I guess that falls into what I've just said, Andy, which
short,
is he an inside fighter or is he
Yeah,
short pressure fighter?
Probably more a
you don't
pressure
see him
fighter.
fight on the inside there. You see him fight in bursts. Yeah.
Exactly.
See, something, this is maybe a wee bit slightly off the subject, but something I've noticed is like somebody gets knocked out with a rabbit punch. How often does that ever get deemed being a foul? If not, like Steve Cunningham got knocked out by Fury. I'm sure that was a rabbit punch or an illegal shot. Did he hold him and hit him or something like that?
Yeah, okay.
That's, and then the fight's over and there's nothing ever said about it. There was a fight at the weekend, and I really rate Alois Jr. when I was still in Glasgow, but he knocked out David Jameson. I think the first punch he got dropped with was a rabbit. There was a punch to the top of the back of the head. When his head was down, he got punched, and that dropped him. But the ref didn't really seem to address that point. And the second knockdown, he might have been the same. The third one, I think he was knocked out.
You remember the first knockdown AJ suffered against Dubois? That seemed pretty high and up around behind-ish. I'm not saying it was. And also the one that Piccoli got caught with against Parker.
Top of the head, yeah. It's no something that's ever addressed, I don't think.
No.
Nobody seems to.
I mean, it's like I'm not saying that Piccoli would have won. I'm not saying that AJ would have won. But I'm saying that the beginning of the end for them both came off a blow that was, let's say, it wasn't on the chin. But
should they be given time to recover like you would from a low blow? I don't know.
It's an illegal punch at the end of the day.
Yeah. So
it's very, very dangerous. There's a reason we don't hit on top and at the back of the head.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, the only
section of the skull, there's a reason for it.
Yeah. I mean, the only one I've seen recently was Lewis Crocker Paddy Donovan fight. But that was a late punch, wasn't it? A punch after the bell.
Late.
Yeah, but that was the whole thing. Maybe that was controversial, wasn't it? With the ref's behavior.
That's a rematch I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. I've got to back Donovan on that one, I think. Going
Yeah,
back.
I think Paddy Donovan is worthy of a $5 pensioner's bet on that day.
pensioners bet. Yeah.
Very, very good fighter is Paddy Donovan. Very,
Very
good.
good, yeah.
Brilliant. He's brilliant.
I tell you, who else I rate is Nathaniel Collins after last
Yes.
weekend.
Oh yeah.
You know that
What
man
he did
got,
to McGregor?
he got
was
booed
magic.
into the ring, and he's a local guy. I couldn't believe he got booed into the ring, but he got cheered out the ring. So
Yeah.
same with Echo Esmond, but he's not been local. But that was quite. I'm going to watch it. Keep an eye on him, Nathaniel Collins. I think
He'll pick up the flag now that Taylor should be done if he's sensible.
yeah.
Maybe
think-
Collins will be the one to pick it up.
There's also a young
difficult
guy.
because sorry.
Sorry, it's just I was going to say. There's also a young guy, Aston Brown. Well, he's not actually that young. He's 34, but I think he's had a stop-start career for personal reasons. But he had a good first-round knockout, Reece Porter. I was quite impressed with him. So we'll see where he goes forward as well. I met him after the fight, actually. Congratulate him. But, I did a wee video on him. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on going forward now too. Sorry, Jules, you were
No, I was just saying that when you're mentioning obviously the kid who beat Lee McGregor, no one it's such a difficult thing being born small.
Yeah.
Or being small because no one's who really pushes these guys. We're saying, oh, he'll get his opportunity. You probably find he spends another 8 months on the sofa.
Mm.
It's just we've had some stars at flyweight, haven't we? Obviously, with another not flyweights, the bigger than flyweights, and moved up to featherweight. But generally, there's a 9 stone and below. They don't get much activity. They don't get much attention. They don't get much money, and people just want to see the big guys, don't they? Or the heavier. It's such a shame, is that because some of the
you've got to be able to talk, haven't you? I think that's why Sonny Edwards did so well because he's got a mouth on him.
Absolutely.
Might not always agree, but he can certainly sell a fight. So
yeah, and even in countries that do produce really, really, really good small men, at the elite level, they still never seem to manage to break through into that sort of superstar level. Like, I mean, I'm thinking of Inoue, right? Inoue is so good that if Inoue was a Brit or an American, it would be everybody would know about him, right?
Chocolatito Gonzalez is the even bigger story there, Bob. But like I hadn't, and I would rate myself as a bit more hardcore than most. I didn't hear about Chocolatito really until he was like 38, 39 and 0, something like that. Yeah. So, and he was a phenomenal fighter.
Yeah, so you've got a couple of things going on. You've got somebody whose English isn't their first language, and of course, as Jules was saying, you've got the little guys. The little guys don't get that fair shake because it's like everybody wants to see the 18-stone guy who's knocking people out.
It's up to the promoters to promote them better, I think. Yeah. So maybe even it's the promoters favouring the bigger guys or the more marketable commodities or whatever you say. I mean, I don't buy into this marketability stuff. I think everyone should be earned on merit, like rep rankings and all this. I mean, this keeps saying that AJ, he should see people in TalkSport. Oh yeah, he should get another title shot because he's marketable. It's like, well,
I think we've got 3 things, right? We've got boxing as a sport, boxing as entertainment, and boxing as business.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to sell out 96,000 seat arena, you need somebody who people name recognition, whatever, they're going to go and pony up there however many dollars that it is, right? It's really annoying when you hear people talk about marketability because it means usually that meritocracy is not in the same area code.
Sometimes I think they use it as an excuse to keep somebody who's more valid a title shot who could be dangerous. Oh, no, they're no market. Yeah. Well, we can't fight them.
Yeah, you don't have enough social media followers.
That's it.
You can make anybody marketable. Look at Golovkin. Golovkin could hardly speak a word of the Queen's. And, he ended up... Yeah, but he was marketable because he was a killer at the end of the day. Big drama show and one of my favourite fighters of the last 10, 15 years. Quality fighter.
Looked like a choir boy and punched like a killer. That's
Yeah, he beat Canelo as well. Well, first and
yeah.
second fight, in my opinion. But
I think so. Yeah.
Well, I mean, looks are deceiving. Look at Mr. Usyk. Looks like a very, very nice, respectable, decent fellow, which I'm sure he
Yeah.
is. But he's also one of the baddest men on the planet, right?
he looks like Rick Mail to me. I think he looks like Rick Mail. He's got crazy eyes. So that's just
Well, unfortunately, guys, we're out of time. Out of time. That sounds like a song, doesn't it? Chris Farrell.
R.E.M. album.
A good song, a very good song by a very good singer. So I'd just like to thank everybody for watching, and there'll be more of these going forward. And don't forget, like and subscribe to Andy's Cavern and Canada Boxing channel. And just thanks to everybody for watching, and stay posted. And thanks to Julian, Jamie, and Bob. And thank myself.
We'll send invoices at our usual rate.
So it's good night from these guys, and good night from me. Good night.
Cheers, guys. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Cheers.